If chapter 1 is the pain of covenant love and chapter 2 is the process, chapter 3 is the power of covenant love. And there are 5 characteristics of God's brand of love in this chapter. You're going to see God's love in 5 characteristics. And we're going to fall through them very quickly. The first one is in verses 1 through 10. Love places the needs of others above my personal comfort. God's kind of love puts the needs of other people above my comfort. God is looking for the kind of love that gets the woman up at 3 a.m. when the baby's crying because the baby needs to nurse. It's you act deliberately to meet a need because there's a need, expecting nothing in return. That's love. But God's brand of love places other people's needs above your personal comfort. Now, here's the illustration in verses 1 to 10. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, shall I not seek security for you, that it may be well with you? Now is not Boaz our kinsman, with whose maids you were? Behold, he winnows barley at the threshing floor tonight. Wash yourself, therefore, anoint yourself, put on your best clothes, and go down to the threshing floor, but do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. It shall be that when he lies down, that you shall notice the place where he lies, and you shall go and uncover his feet and lie down, and then he will tell you what you shall do." Now, this is a problem that's been going on for generations with women, that they uncover your feet. Actually, I'm not saying that they were entrapping Boaz. I am saying that they are catching him at a moment in which he is absolutely going to be open to listening to what she has to say. Because if he's caught out there at night with a woman alone who's a Moabitess, it's not going to go well for him. So it's not exactly entrapment, but it's really persuasive. Let's put it that way. So why is he sleeping out there on a barley harvest threshing floor?
What is a threshing floor?
Oh, what is a threshing floor? I can't wait to take you and show you a threshing floor. All right. You have a mountain outside of a village. And what you do is you clear off the top and you put little walls in a circular, you wall in kind of a semicircle. Let's go up here. This is you floating above it, looking down, okay? And what it looks like is this on the inside. This is the wall all the way around the outside. Those are stones. Work with me here. Or a birthday cake, one of the two. Anyway, and what you do is you have this bumpy surface. It's actually the bumpy surface of the ground itself. It's more or less level. Then you take something, can you picture a toboggan? Does everybody know what a toboggan looks like? Floridians. Ay, ay, ay. It looks like this.
Okay.
So normally you sled on these, okay? Because it's not a sled. Sleds have those little things on the bottom. A toboggan is just flat on the bottom. Okay? But what they do is they put stones, they insert stones in the bottom of it. When you turn it up on its side, there are stones. You drill holes and stick stones in it all over. And you set it down on the floor, and then you get on top of it. You put the barley or the wheat down on the ground, on the uneven surface of the ground. You get on the top of it, stand on the toboggan, put your foot against the front of it, get a donkey, and have him pull you. And you go about 15 feet and you crush it. The donkey turns around, 15 feet, you come back and crush it. And what you're doing is going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. You are crushing and breaking the actual barley or wheat open. Then you'll take a winnowing fork. It's basically looks like a pitchfork made out of wood. And you go like this and you throw it in the air. And the reason you do it at the top of the hill is the breeze comes by and all of the casing, the chaff around the wheat or the barley goes against the stone wall. But what drops is the barley itself. And that's what you're going to sell. Okay? And you're trying to get just the grain. Now it's all done like on machines and stuff. But still, I can take you to places where it's still being done this way in the Middle East. The problem is it's very labor intensive. You spend hours and hours and hours, and why are you sleeping out there? Yeah, because this is your bank account and it's laying all over the floor. There's really nothing you can do but lay right there. Probably keep a dagger right here. Anybody comes to get your barley, they're going to get a little bit of steel instead. Now, what ends up happening is the way she does this. Naomi, by the way, is the one with the conniving mind. Ruth is being told what to do. She's like, okay, and next what do I do? Uncover his feet. Uncover feet. Then what do I do? It says in verse 5, she said to her, all that you say I will do. So she went down to the threshing floor and did according to all that her mother-in-law had commanded her. Beware of those mother-in-laws. When Boaz had eaten and drunk and his heart was merry, okay, which means he had just done Thanksgiving. He passed out after the football game. He went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. She came secretly and uncovered his feet. You use the top. Most people had a wrap that they pulled off of themselves and laid down and put it over their feet and wrapped it underneath. You're laying on basically hay and you're kind of wrapped underneath. What's that?
I said I was picturing this in my head and it just looks weird.
Yeah, well, but you're sleeping. It's not like, it's not fashion wear, okay? And besides this is your coat that you wear, but your coat is also your blanket. That's why Jesus said, don't get into a court at law because they may take away your coat and then you'll be cold at night. The coat that you wear during the day is also your blanket at night. So it's all-purpose stuff. But that way, if you happen to be on a journey, you're wearing the same thing you're always wearing. Honestly, people could be identified by the color that they wore or what they wore because they wore it every day. You never really changed. And you cleaned your clothes when you cleaned you, right? Now, it says that she uncovered her feet and lay down. And it happened in the middle of the night that the man was startled and bent forward, and behold, a woman was lying at his feet. In other words, she didn't exactly wake him up. She very carefully kind of pulled it over to where it was on her, uncovering his feet, and he woke up and she's laying there. Okay, now this is, at best, an embarrassing situation for him.
What's with the whole feet uncovering thing?
He's trying to wake her. He'll wake up if his feet's uncovered. At some point, he'll get cold, okay? But it's also, her position at his feet is intentional. It's a servant position. So it's kind of interesting. He says, who are you? Which is what you say when somebody is there and you didn't expect them. I am Ruth, your maid. So spread your covering over your maid, for you are a close relative. This is her explaining very closely, I'm in the family and I will reunite the family if you want to do that. He said, may you be blessed of the Lord, my daughter. You have shown your last kindness to be better than the first by not going after young men, whether poor or rich. Apparently, he's a lot older than her, and she's good looking. So he's like, wow, you're kidding me, right? Seriously, this is like the best moment of my life right now. Can we slow this down, maybe get it on tape? And he says, now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you whatever you ask, for all my people in the city know that you are a woman of excellence. I want you to see that. I think what's interesting about the story is the first 10 verses tell you that love places the need above comfort. She goes out and does what otherwise could have been humiliating in her life because the need is greater for Naomi than her sense of herself. So she does it. But in verse 11, love sees the value of others. And I want you to switch places now. Look at the value he places on her. I want you to see that for the first 10 verses, it's Naomi receiving love from Ruth. In verse 11, it's Boaz receiving, or it's Ruth receiving love from Boaz. What does he say to her? You're a woman of excellence, but even more than that, who knows that you're a woman of excellence? The entire city. You mean the entire city of Israelites that was liable to look at her, down on her because she was a Moabitess? See what he's doing? He's saying, you have distinguished yourself in the most unlikely place possible. You're the immigrant that everybody admires. Everybody sees that you have something really excellent. I think that put in her heart a joy that's much bigger than you think. It's not only that he saw her as a woman of excellence, but that all the price that she was paying to be a loving example to Naomi was paying off in the voices of women at the well in the morning where she couldn't hear it. Let me just remind you of something. When you do right, you don't just do it for the people that are observing it. There are people watching your life that you're not aware of. And when you continually do right, and you do it as unto the Lord, not worried about what people are seeing is great. When you do it humbly, not on display, but just to do it for the Lord. Now, go to verse 12, because in verse 12 and 13, love seeks the best for the object of that love. Love provides rest and comfort. Look at what he does. Remain this night, and when morning comes, if he says, wait a minute, I got to back up, verse 12. Now it is true that I am a close relative. However, there's a relative closer than I. This has to do with the kinsman-redeemer law. The closest relative gets the opportunity first to redeem the family. Now, in the redemption, what happens? Do you remember in your study of the law what happens in a redemption? They're going to swap sandals, and that's going to be the symbol of it. But what is that? What happens? Okay, let's say my name is Joe, and I am Elimelech's long-lost brother that came back from the war, okay? Work with me here. Joe is closer than Boaz. So Joe gets a first shot, but what does Joe have to be willing to do in order to redeem the name of Elimelech? Normally, who would Joe marry? Naomi. However, he could by proxy marry Naomi's maid and still it would be legal. So, what though would Joe give up?
Inheritance?
If Joe takes on Elimelech's property, he also takes on Elimelech's name. He also takes on Elimelech's liabilities. If Joe's not in a position to meet the markers of whatever Elimelech left that he owed, Joe would be stupid to do it, especially if there's somebody else who can. So Joe might step out of the way. And in this case, he's going to. I made him up. I don't know what his name is. But, okay. So all Boaz is saying is, I don't get first dibs on this. Somebody else gets first. And if they don't want to do it, then I can do it. Then look at verse 13. Remain this night, and when morning comes, if he will redeem you, good, let him redeem you. But if he does not wish to redeem you, then I will redeem you as the Lord lives. Lie down until morning. Now, look at verse 14. She lay at his feet until morning and rose before one could recognize another. And he said, let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. In other words, go home when it's still before dawn so nobody knows you were here. Why is he doing that?
Protect her?
Yes, he's protecting her reputation. She's built a reputation of excellence in the community and he doesn't want to ruin it. And one of the things I would tell you is when somebody really loves you, they care about your reputation. They care about what it looks like. Now, the other thing I will tell you is look at verse 14. That's love seeks the best reputation. That's what it is. Love is looking out for the reputation of the other. And then go to verses 15 and following. Look at the excitement. There is excitement in coming to grips with God's love. I want you to see the excitement. This is two girls. Okay? She's sneaking into the house. Now, verse 15. He said, give me the cloak that is on you and hold it. And she held it. And he measured 6 measures of barley and laid it on her, and she went into the city. Now she came to the city to her mother-in-law, and she said, how did it go, my daughter? That is not what she said. Come on, I want to hear every detail. Now, how did it go? Sit right here. Just put that barley aside. Tell me what happened. That's more what she said. She said, these 6 measures of barley he gave to me, for he said, do not go to your mother-in-law empty-handed. Why did he give her more barley? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. This is good. Thanks, Mama. You know. Then she said, wait, my daughter, until you know how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest until he has settled it today. How does she know that? Oh, yeah, you hooked him. Uh-huh. He's not sleeping till he works this out, honey. Sit right down. Let me get you a cup of tea, because we're okay now. We got some barley. You want some barley cakes? We can do some barley cakes. How about pancakes with barley cakes? What you hear is a different voice on her. And that's what I wanted you to hear. I want you to hear that at the end of the power of covenant love, there's the redemption of the heart of Naomi. Before Naomi's bank account is redeemed, her heart comes alive. And here's the funny part. She hasn't really sat down and talked to Boaz yet. She didn't need to. He sent barley. That's all she needed. The card was good enough. The flowers and the card, that was it. She didn't need to be there. She got the barley. Okay? And she's got this nailed. He's not resting. Yeah. And you also have to read, he's like probably not the most handsome guy out there and a good bit older than her. She's really good looking. And I think Naomi can add this up and go, uh-huh. Now, get to the purpose of covenant love, because that's the end. Chapter 4 is the purpose of covenant love. And what happens when God's covenant love is made plain? When God's brand of love becomes clear. And it says, now Boaz went up to the gate and sat down there. Do you remember that the gate of the city is where the judges sit, right? So, for instance, Proverbs 31, you know, her husband is known in the gate of the city. We talked about this in relation to Lot sitting at the gate. So he went to the courthouse, is really what it says. He went to the gate of the city and sat down, and behold, the closest relative of whom Boaz spoke was passing by. So he said, turn aside, friend, sit down right here. And he turned aside and sat down. Meaning, I have something I need to discuss with you. And he sits down in the outer chamber of the gate, which is where little congresses, little private meetings are held so that people can before the court. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city. He said, would you all sit down here, please? So now he's calling and convening a group. So they sat. Now, I don't know, but maybe the closer relative thought Boaz was about to sue him. I don't know. But he comes into the story, and he said to the closest relative, Naomi, who has come back from the land of Moab, has to sell the piece of land which belonged to our brother Elimelech. You never heard this before, did you? This is the first time in the story you hear about selling land. She's not selling it. He's setting up that she has to transfer the property. That's what the sale is. She doesn't have a male heir, so one of us are going to have to take the transfer of property on. That's what he's doing. So I thought to inform you, saying, buy it before those who are sitting here and before the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if not, tell me that I may know, for there is no one but you to redeem it, and I am after you. And he said, I will redeem it. So the man looked at it and said, okay, well, I think I can sign on for that. Then Boaz said, on the day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you must also acquire Ruth the Moabitess, the widow of the deceased, in order to raise up the name of the deceased in his inheritance. Why does he get Ruth and not Naomi? Under the law, he would normally get Naomi. Why is he getting Ruth? Exactly. Naomi's beyond childbearing years. So if there's a woman who's within childbearing years, you can raise up the name of the dead one. That's a bit of a problem for the relative. He seems to be stammering a bit. Okay? The closest relative said, I cannot redeem it for myself because I would jeopardize my own inheritance. Redeem it for yourself. If I have a child with her, the child with her would compete with my own child for the dual inheritance I put together. I already have a firstborn child. That's what he's saying. And if she has a firstborn, two firstborns will come in conflict with one another. I don't want to do that. He could do it. By law, he could. He doesn't want to. So he says, redeem it for yourself. You may have my right of redemption, for I cannot redeem it. He has just now bowed out, and he's done it in front of 10 judges or 10 elders. Now, this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning the redemption and the exchange of land to confirm any matter. A man removed his sandal and gave it to another, and this was the manner of attestation in Israel. So the closest relative said to Boaz, buy it for yourself, and he removed his sandal. Who removed his sandal? It's not, and the reason I pointed out is that's the way people read it, but that's not the grammar. The grammar is Boaz removed his sandal. So the closest relative says, I can't do it, and he backs out. Boaz removes his sandal. Whose sandal is Boaz going to get? He's taking off his, but he's putting on whose? Elimelech's sandal. He's raising up the dead man's name. So he's saying, I take and put aside all of my rights and property and make them second to me, and I bind myself to raising up the name of Elimelech. So any children between Boaz and Ruth would be Elimelech's legal children. But the legal state of Elimelech would remain in Elimelech's hands. Why? Because Boaz was walking in his shoes. That's what he's doing.
How would he have gotten them?
Oh, he brought them with him. Surely this was all done. There's a lot arranged here that isn't told to you in the book.
Okay, so
Now at this point, all he's doing is he's removing his sandals. He's going to put on Elimelech's, but this is the symbol of, I'm going to do that. So he takes his off.
Naomi would have brought the
Yeah, much later. And the whole thing is, once he takes his off, that's the point of the story. He didn't need to wear the other ones. He's saying, I will take off my primary properties to put on this one. He doesn't lose his properties. It's not that. It's that the heir of the Boaz and Ruth will also get Boaz's property. So he owns his property. He's about to own Elimelech's property, but he's going to lose his name because his property will be ceded to the heir who's raised in Elimelech's name, not in his own.
Now, how did that work out? Because I thought part of the idea with the redemption law was to keep all the names.
Yes, but he's raising up a name that both of them have the same name, the name of their fathers.
Okay.
So you go back and it's still keeping the name of that line. If he was the last of a line, that's a different thing. That's not what's happening here. There's obviously other people. There's a guy walking around who's another relative. So nobody's going to lose the name, except for Boaz doesn't exactly get all the accolades that Boaz would normally get if he wasn't redeeming a property of Elimelech. And in essence, they're holding up Elimelech's name. This is, by the way, a deeply honorable thing to do in the community. I mean, people would gain respect for doing this kind of thing. Now, what I'm trying to get you to see is that the opportunity of blessing to others around God's work will become likely. And one of the things that strikes me is some people will be anxious to be involved until they know the cost. But once they know the cost, they're less likely to want to be involved. Here's the ironic truth. Those that love their life, those that love their reputation, those that love their inheritance more than God's will die and be forgotten. We don't know who that guy is. We don't even know his name. The ironic truth is he said, no, I can't do it because I have to preserve my family name, and his name never shows up in the book. In the eternal word of God, the people who do show up in the book are the people who are willing to give up their name. I think that's a little bit ironic. The point is the illustration of love. All the way through the book, each person keeps swapping off the illustration of love. And what I want you to see is, look at the purpose of what God is doing here. Now, if you come down to it, it says, the closest relative said to Boaz, buy it for yourself, verse 8, and he removed his sandal. Then Boaz said to the elders and all the people, you are witnesses today that I have bought the land. I bought from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech and all that belonged to Chilion and Machlon. Moreover, I have acquired Ruth the Moabitess, the widow of Machlon, to be my wife in order to raise up the name of the deceased on his inheritance, so that the name of the deceased will not be cut off from his brothers or from the court of his birthplace. You are witnesses today. So he's effectively now taken over the name of Elimelech. All the people who were in the court, all the elders said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, both of whom built the house of Israel, and may you achieve wealth in Ephratah and become famous in Bethlehem. This is supposed to be a compliment. I think if anybody said, may your wife be like Rachel and Leah, having known Rachel and Leah in the story, I'm not sure that that's as much a bargain as you might, yeah, let's move on. Moreover, may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, through the offspring which the Lord will give you by this young woman. In other words, they blessed them all around with all kinds of Bible blessings, okay? And they sent them off with, Bibles and Bible things. And it says, so Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife, and he went into her, and the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. Then the women said to Naomi, blessed is the Lord, who has not left you without a redeemer today, and may his name become famous in Israel. May he also be to you a restorer of life, a sustainer of your old age, for your daughter-in-law who loves you is better to you than 7 sons, and has given birth to him. It's interesting how the people around Naomi saw the blessing of God on her hand, God's hand on her life more profoundly than she did, or earlier than she did, and that's often the case. People that have been through the harshness and bitterness of having their hands emptied are sometimes the last to see how God is really at work. I love that the people here not only blessed him, but they all bless her. The women bless her. Now here's the end of it. What's the purpose of covenant love? God redeemed a family to redeem a nation. How did he do it? Naomi took the child and laid him in her lap, and she became his nurse. She's lost her sons, she's lost her husband, but in this young baby, she finds this great love and promise of her future. The neighbor women gave him a name, saying, a son has been born to Naomi. So they named him Oved. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Oved is worker. It's a word that means servant or worker. And what's interesting is she's so often seen with this baby that the baby becomes known as the servant of her. What they're doing is a tender image here. This is a woman who's found new life in her old age, holding on to this child. But I want you to see something. The child has to take care of her. And it's sort of turned around. By the time the child's 5, he's probably running and getting her water from the well because she can't get him water. Okay? She's old. And so in the delights of her old age, she's smiling because as she sits and rocks him, and he's now bigger than her and stronger than her, everybody's making the illusion that God has redeemed your life. He's given you something satisfying and rich. And then he goes on and says, connects it to, God not only gave you, Naomi, blessing, but God gave to the nation, King David, through this. Now, these are the generations of Perez. To Perez was born Hezron. To Hezron was born Ram. To Ram, Aminadav. Aminadav, Nachshon. Nachshon, Salmon. Salmon, born to Boaz. And to Boaz, Oved. And Oved was born to Jesse. And to Jesse, David. And the last word here, David, is also the word much loved one. Okay? Or beloved one. And you would then put ... at the end of verse 22, and from the line of David came Jesus. Now, let's close this by simply making one simple statement. God took everything from this woman. And partway through the story, she said, I am bitter. The Lord has been terrible to me. Had he? Well, yeah, in a way you could say losing everybody you love, losing your family farm, being stuck in some place, it's pretty bad, isn't it? But God was emptying her hands so that he could bless the entire world with a Redeemer. If God is saying no to what you're asking, it's because he's saying yes to something more important. You have to know the character of God. And his chesed, his loving kindness, is not going to let you go. And if your heart is broken and the things in your life are falling apart, you must understand that when I cannot see what he's doing, I have to fall back on the character of who he is. That's what I have. So how many times this year so far have you asked, so why did God, and I've cut you off and said, I don't know. The point isn't you're not reading the Bible so you can build a compendium on how God works. You're studying the scriptures so that you can know the character of God. So that when his acts make no sense, his character is what you trust. Do not trust the circumstances. Trust the character of God. Trust the character of God. The circumstances rise and fall, and you cannot read the tea leaves of your own life very well. Guys, you can't. You're going to be convinced that you understand where it's going. You don't know. The character of God is good. So we leave our class with God is good. All the time. All the time, God is good. It's not possible for him to be not good. For he defines what good is by his very character. It should sort of make you feel unqualified to judge your own life, because you are unqualified to judge your own life. You don't know. I mentioned it to you earlier in the year. I don't mind repeating myself. I clipped out years ago that simple story. In the 1920s, there was a train wreck in southern Germany. 46 people were injured or killed. Was that a good thing or a bad thing? That was bad. A young man was thrown through a plate glass window, according to the little story, and fell into a bed of pine cones utterly unhurt. Though he went through a glass window and fell into pine cones in a train accident, he was unhurt. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's a great thing. His name was Adolf Hitler. Was that a good thing or a bad thing? This is a story he told. My point is, the day something happens, you're not qualified to evaluate who got the good thing and who got the bad thing. You don't know. You're not smart enough to run the universe. So what you have to do is sit back and go, what is God like? The issue isn't what does it look like is happening. The issue is what is God doing. Let me close this and ask you to do something. If God starts doing in your life things that hurt so bad that you're saying, why are you doing them? Change the question. You'll get better answers if you offer better questions. Okay? Here's the question you want to ask. God, why can't I see what I should be and how you're speaking to me in the midst of this pain? That's a better question. Not why are you doing it, but what do you want me to hear? Okay? So change it to that.